Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are attempting to tear down an idea that's been true for centuries, maybe even millennia.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We're looking at a huge stack of sources that get into how the business of consumer lending, one of the oldest businesses there is being completely changed by artificial intelligence.
Fundamentally changed.
And before we get into the shiny new tech, we have to talk about the starting point. The core problem, and it's stated right up front in the material, is that lending is historically described as just a terrible business.
Right. Inherently difficult.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why? Why is it considered such a bad place to try and succeed?
It all comes down to what the sources call the impossible trifecta.
The impossible trifecta. Okay.
So every business wants three things: fast growth, high profitability, actually making money, and for credit, you need excellent credit performance.
Meaning the loans actually get paid back.
Exactly. And historically, lenders could get one, maybe two of those, but getting all three at the same time, that was seen as basically impossible, a foundational truth of the industry.
So if you go for huge growth, your credit quality tanks.
Right.
Or you run such a tight ship that you barely make any profit. You just can't have it all.
Precisely. And the reason why is, well, it's pretty profound. Lending is ancient, right? We're talking 5,000 years. And it's incredibly competitive.
Almost a perfectly competitive market.
It is. So when you have thousands of companies all competing, the only way you can really get an edge is by taking risks others won't, or by, sacrificing your margin. The market forces you into a trade-off.
It's like a law of business physics.
That's a great way to put it. The sources basically call it a fundamental law of the universe in business. But, and this is the key, they argue that this law was only a law because of a limiting assumption about technology.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We're exploring how changing that underlying technology assumption, moving from old methods to advanced ML, is what releases that 5,000-year-old constraint.
And makes that impossible trifecta suddenly possible.
To really get the revolution, we have to start with the establishment. Consumer credit underwriting is described as a very mature discipline.
Oh, yeah. Very mature, very rigid.
The sources say you can literally download textbooks telling you exactly how to do it. It's all reinforced by rating agencies, regulators, bank credit committees.
And that textbook method for building a credit model is strikingly standardized.
Okay, so walk us through it, the old way.
Step one is the preliminary scorecard. You identify maybe 8 to 15 variables. And note that small number.
Not a lot of data points.
No, because you have to be able to intuitively explain why you chose those 15 variables to, your regulator or your risk committee.
The focus is on simplicity then, not necessarily maximum accuracy.
Correct. And the big constraint comes right after that. Step two uses a statistical method called logistic regression.
Which is basically a linear model.
It is. It gives you one weight for each of those variables, and critically, it assumes there's a linear and independent effect between each variable and the outcome.
Hold on, why is assuming linearity such a problem? I mean, risk factors don't just add up neatly, do they?
They absolutely don't. That's the core limitation. Think about it. Low income is a risk. High debt is a risk. But having low income and high debt isn't just risk A plus risk B.
It's way worse. It's exponential.
Exactly. They interact. The traditional model is structurally blind to that complexity. It just sees them as additive.
Wow, okay.
Then step three simplifies this rigid system even more. It's called a scorecard. For most lenders, using the linear model directly is operationally too complex, so they just create a lookup table.
Like a menu.
It is. If you have 0 inquiries in 6 months, you get 50 points. Too many delinquencies, you lose 40 points. It's simple, rigid, and auditable.
It's perfectly built for a world where people are checking everything by hand.
Right. And finally, step four is that manual verification. Documents, phone calls, verifying income, identity, employment. It sounds safe, but it's slow, it's expensive, and it's a massive bottleneck if you want to grow.
So we have a sturdy, analog, expensive system that's held back by its own simplicity. Okay, let's jump to the timeline of innovation, starting around 2013. The sources say the early innovators started with zero data and were very naive.
And it took them over 5 years just to get to what's called a calibrated model, a model where the loans actually perform as expected.
The first hurdle was just data or no data. So in 2014, what did they do?
Well, since they couldn't just magic up their own training data, they looked to third-party academic research. And they happened upon alternative data, specifically education data.
Where you went to school, your highest degree, that kind of thing.
Yep. And this is where the sources drop a genuinely surprising fact. They had to use some statistical tricks to make it work, But what they found was remarkable. They found that if you had to build a credit model with only one variable, you wouldn't choose FICO.
No way.
You would choose the borrower's highest degree or the school they attended. On a one-to-one basis, it was found to be more predictive of credit outcome than a FICO score.
That is staggering. The industry standard for decades, FICO, was less effective than a single data point they pulled from academic research.
That's what they found, because education often correlates with long-term stability, with lifetime income trajectory. It's a powerful proxy for commitment and, the ability to repay.
That insight alone proves the old system wasn't just slow, it was fundamentally missing the point.
It was a game changer. It proved that the law of linearity could be broken. So by 2015, they started getting their own proprietary training data.
And they could build on that idea.
Immediately, they abandoned the single linear model standard and built an ensemble of models.
Okay, an ensemble. For those of us who aren't deep learning experts, how is that different?
The old way is like asking one single expert for a ruling, based on their 15 favorite factors. An ensemble is like asking 100 different experts.
Oh, see.
Some linear, some nonlinear, some focused only on debt, others only on geography. And then the system creates a weighted average of all their conclusions. It lets the model see those complex, nonlinear interactions we talked about.
Which instantly boosts how predictive it is.
Right. Then, moving to 2016, they took these better models and applied them to the loan process itself. They enabled instant approvals. And this did something really crucial.
It created a much faster feedback loop.
Exactly, because if a loan is approved in minutes and it immediately goes bad, or the person's a fraudster, you don't have to wait 5 years, within months.
And this is where that alternative data comes back in.
Yes, it greased the wheels of automation. Remember that manual verification, the phone calls and documents?
Step 4, the bottleneck.
Right. Well, if you're trying to verify someone's employment, and you already know they have a verified computer science degree from Carnegie Mellon, it makes their claim of being a software engineer at Google much, much more likely to be true.
So the data points aren't just predicting risk, they're helping to verify identity. Speed and data quality all working together.
That's the power of it. Then 2017 brought enough data for, true modern machine learning methods. But they hit a massive wall.
The incomplete data problem.
The incomplete data problem. Almost all modern ML algorithms were designed for problems with complete data.
Like the classic example of classifying a dog or a cat. You know the answer right away.
Right. But in lending, you have to wait up to 5 years to know the ultimate outcome. The model is always operating with partial, incomplete information. And the algorithms just don't like that uncertainty.
So they couldn't just download some open source ML tool and plug it in.
No, they had to custom build a solution. The sources note they developed a proprietary and now patented technique to adapt these algorithms, like XGBoost, so they could handle this incomplete lending data.
Okay, so that's a huge step. And then in 2018, they moved on to something called revenue science.
Right. If the risk models are the supply side, how much capital you need, revenue science is the demand side. It's using ML to optimize pricing and conversion.
Why did that become so important?
Because the better the risk separation got, the more nuanced the pricing had to be. The model started creating a huge variance in individual rate sensitivity among borrowers.
Meaning some people were getting a much better deal than others relative to what they could get elsewhere.
Exactly. So to maximize the value you capture while still being competitive, you need ML to fine-tune the pricing for each person. The better your risk model is, the more money you risk leaving on the table if your pricing model isn't just as sophisticated.
Which brings us to 2019. The sources really highlight this as the moment of the true breakthrough. This is where they solve that fundamental long-term survival problem.
Yeah, this is a big one. If you look at the old industry standard, lenders had 2 really bad choices for dealing with time.
Okay.
They could either throw out all their recent data, which left them with really stale models, or they could assume a fixed default timing curve.
And that timing curve just assumes every group of loans behaves the same over time.
Identically. If you saw, say, X defaults at month 6, you just mathematically assume there would be 2X defaults at month 12. It forces every single loan to fit an average trajectory.
And the breakthrough that shattered this was the loan month model. How did that work?
It completely changed the paradigm. Instead of modeling just one single outcome, did the loan get paid back, yes or no? It separately predicts 2 things, default and prepayment.
Okay.
And it does that for every single month of a loan's life.
So for a standard 5-year loan, that's 60 months, meaning 120 distinct predictions for just one loan.
Exactly. They took one massive complex problem and broke it down into 120 discrete problems that modern ML algorithms could actually solve.
But does modeling the trajectory really matter that much? If two people have the same overall chance of defaulting, shouldn't they get the same rate?
It matters massively
Yeah.
because of the time value of money, which ties right back to profitability. The sources give this great illustration.
Okay, let's hear it.
Take two borrowers, A and B. They have the exact same lifetime default probability. Let's say it's 12.65%.
Okay, identical risk on paper.
On paper, yes. But if we look at their default trajectories, they're radically different. Borrower A is much more likely to default in the first year. Borrower B is much more likely to default in the second half of the loan.
And a traditional model would treat them the same. It would put them on that same average gray line.
And the underwriting would be, and I'm quoting, terribly wrong, because the early defaults from borrower A eat into the lender's capital much, much faster.
Oh, right. A default at month 6 means the lender loses out on 4.5 years of interest payments.
Exactly. And they have to reallocate that capital immediately. Early defaults are just inherently more costly to the business.
Wait a second. So the timing of the default is actually more expensive than the probability itself. That's what decades of underwriting completely missed.
That is the crucial financial reality that was missed. So when the loan must model calculated the actuarially correct APRs for these two borrowers, the difference was enormous. Borrower A should be charged 16.7%.
And borrower B.
Borrower B should be charged 13.09%.
Wow. That difference is 361 basis points. The traditional approach is forced to be hundreds of basis points wrong.
Which means they're either grossly overcharging borrower B and losing that good customer to a competitor, or they're dramatically undercharging borrower A and just losing a ton of capital.
That efficiency gain separating risk by timing, not just total probability, that is the engine. That's what lets them get fast growth, profitability, and great credit performance all at once.
The loan month model framework solved the problem that created the impossible trifecta.
So let's just summarize this journey. We've traced this clear path. It started by finding that alternative data, like education, could be better than FICO. Then it evolved with ensemble modeling, solving the incomplete data problem, and it all led up to the loan month model, which cracked the critical time horizon problem.
Right. The convergence of all those insights is what finally lets them break that 5,000-year-old trade-off.
And the sources note that by 2020, their training data was increasing exponentially.
Which just suggests the power and precision of these models will keep growing, amplifying their edge year after year.
So what does this all mean for you listening? You've seen how decades of standardized, regulated practice can be completely overturned by questioning one fundamental assumption.
In this case, the linear model and the fixed timing curve.
It just shows that even the most mature and stable industries are vulnerable to focused technological work.
And that raises an important question for you to think about. If core technological assumptions can be changed to defy a 5,000-year-old fundamental law in lending, what other ancient universally accepted business truisms might just be waiting for a similar technological disruption? Is the law of diminishing returns really a law, or is it just a function of outdated technology?